good you can do locally, that's fine if that's everyone's goal. If you want to be international superstars, that's also good as long as it's the goal. But when everybody's going for that same objective, that's when it really works and when it really sings. We're into picks and bans for the first time now. As Aurelion Sol and Gragas, the first couple bans from P1, they will not even think about letting Huhi have that signature change.
Exactly. I feel like Kennen might be the last ban from Phoenix One just because they don't like to play it at all. Counterlogic Gaming, Zach, Galio, and then there's a few questions here about Caitlyn. Is Caitlyn going to show up in this pick ban? Counterlogic Gaming played against it. Wild Turtle crushed them in Game 2 against FlyQuest, and then they played it, and Stixxay won Game 3 for them to win that series. So I feel like Phoenix One, it might be a Kennen ban here, but then that leaves up things like the Caitlyn, like the LeBlanc to be played by themselves, but I guess that's the Varus coming in. So they aren't really afraid of the Kennen, even though it's the most banned champion by Phoenix One.
Yeah, Phoenix One actually with an 85% ban rate against Kennen in Summer Split so far. They do not like having this champion on the table, but they are going to grab the Caitlyn for themselves. Interestingly enough, during Phoenix One series against Dignitas yesterday, Caitlyn was banned by Dig all 3 games.
Yeah, they never let Arrow have his hands on it, regardless of blue side or red side. But then here's the fight back. Counterlogic Gaming take away the Lee Sin. Mike Young in solo queue, 71% win rate on Lee Sin with 154 games on it. And when I talked to Dardoch, he said this guy's just a Lee Sin one trick. But I actually think that's not true. You look at Mike Young's solo queue, he has 206 wins, 99 losses in the top of Challenger. The guy is a monster. And it's not just his Lee Sin that has high win rate, it's all of his junglers across the board. And that doesn't show that that shows that he's not a Lee Sin one trick. It shows that he plays Lee Sin and prefers it, but he has good jungle sense in general. Because he has like 4 games of Evelynn, very high win rate. And like you just look across all of his champions, it's the same thing.
Right, and even though Lee Sin accounts for about half of his total games, a true one trick is not somebody who's still playing another champion half the time.
Spoken.
And he's putting up
like a true Skarner one trick.
He's putting up really, really solid win rates on these other champions as well. 71% win rate on Lee, but 68 on Kha'Zix, 70 on Graves, 69 on Zac. He's got good numbers on other stuff. He truly does understand the game beyond just Lee Sin. But this game, he's up against he is the Elise, I should say, up against that Lee that he would like to play in a lot of circumstances. 2 very capable and strong early junglers.
Yeah, I was writing down the most contested things for this champion select. The Lee Sin is #1 next to the Caitlyn. They're kind of tied here, but Caitlyn is just a huge power pick. And the Kennen does get picked up by Counterlogic Gaming, so it wasn't banned by Phoenix One. And we know that Zig really doesn't play this champion.
Right, he doesn't play it, and playing against it can be very difficult for a lot of champions just because it's so strong in the lane. It bullies you out, the range advantage that it has, the split push power that it has. It can be pretty hard to deal with, so gonna keep eyes on Zig this game to see how he will deal with this pick that 85% of the time he doesn't even have to think about dealing with. We're going to move into phase 2 of the bans, and Kled, that pretty signature champion for Zig, has been taken off the table.
And there's kind of this thing about Zig that's been popping up. We talked about it last split where he had these 100% win rates on a lot of carry champions. Not so much the fact this split. A lot of people have been playing against Kled since he became popular. A lot of the champions like Jace became meta, and it was one of Zig's pocket picks. So people have more experience against Zig's champion pool in general now, so it's not as surprising. But also, he always seems to refuse to pick up one champion. Last split, it was Camille. Phoenix One were banning it, both blue and red side, the whole split, instead of first picking it. And now it seems to be the Kennen, where he just doesn't have that in his champion pool to a point where they're comfortable playing it.
LeBlanc will be the ban from Phoenix One so far here in the second phase. 3 seconds to pick their last one, and it looks like Thresh will be #2. Jarvan, the second ban from CLG, really targeting Zig. As now CLG's thinking about adding Blitzcrank into the bottom lane. We saw Aphromoo play that yesterday to moderate success.
Yeah, but it was Aphromu's Blitzcrank. It was quite good in some moments, but I think they may go with this here because it's a Braum, but they may be able to hook him in and just have that engage. But it may not be, to be honest, because like there's some things that you can actually play into that are better. And Morgana's quite surprising, though.
Okay, they switch over to Morgana. They had to swap over to Warwick there for a second just for Stixxay's natural hover to go through.
I forgot to do it.
Yeah, he's like, I almost forgot to do this. We got to make sure we get it in there. But the Morgana coming in means Black Shield to block some of the CC and setup potential coming
cocoon,
out. Maybe an Elise Cocoon, a Winter's Bite, anything like that.
Yeah, walk over a trap with it on, etc. And it leaves the Orianna to be picked up here. Taliyah, Syndra, both on the table still. I think the Syndra would be what Counterlogic Gaming go for as the answer because they are just a across-the-board pick composition here. And when you look at what Counterlogic Gaming does in terms of their play, I'm actually very surprised. We were looking at some stats today. It's like you look at the top 4 people in kills, 3 of them are Counterlogic Gaming members.
Yeah.
You look at the top 5 people in assists, 3 of them are Counterlogic Gaming members. CLG is the bloodiest team where they fight the most out of any team, and they are ahead by like 30+ assists over the next person in their role. It's really ridiculous.
And considering a lot of times when you look at teams and talk about how they play, very often we're tending towards praising teams for being able to take objectives and win games without needing to constantly fight for everything. But CLG, this is a team, like we said, they're currently sitting in second. If they win here, they're going to be tied for first. And they are such a bloody team, but they're still staying at the top of the table. That really intense, fight-heavy style just works for this squad.
Yeah, they were the bloodiest team back in spring, but they had more deaths than they did kills. And now it's the opposite, where they have way more kills than they do deaths. So they're gambits have been working out this time, and they seem more aligned with the pickup of Dardoch being very aggressive for them in the beginning of the game.
Now, after the bans towards that top side and the Kennen pickup from the side of CLG, it is Jace that Phoenix One ultimately decides to answer that Kennen with. So range versus range, power versus power there in the top lane. Orianna versus Ahri is actually going to be your mid lane matchup as well, putting Huhi on that mobile, high-damage assassin potential.
Yeah, another champion that does have that pick potential. The Syndra has a lower win rate against Orianna just as a matchup. So the Ahri gets to kind of go around, avoid the shockwave, have more ways to counterplay. So I do like the pickup there instead of the Syndra, which went unpicked or banned, even though it's globally one of the most picked or banned champions in the game.
Now let's remember what we saw from Phoenix One yesterday against Dignitas, because early on in their matches, they were able to have objective control. They took turrets, they took drakes. The couple kills they did get, they translated into something more. Their big problem was when the fights rolled around, they just started to lose, and that's against Dignitas. Now we're talking about another top-level team in CLG that we just mentioned how prone they are towards fighting, how much they want to fight. So Phoenix One has got to make sure they're not falling behind in terms of the tempo of these fights and being able to control who's fighting, who's dying, and what the consequences of that is.
Yeah, and right now their composition looks like it's set up for Siege, a little bit of team fight, and they'll see if they can win that top lane too with Zig playing the Jace, which does have a favorable matchup into the Kennen early.
All right, on to Summoner's Rift for the first time in this best-of-3. CLG fighting to stay at the top of the table at the end of Week 3. Phoenix One still fighting to get that first win, stop that free fall towards the bottom like we've been talking about with them. Very surprising start in summer after their performance in spring. Solidly the #3 team then, able to pretty much defeat anybody at will except for TSM and Cloud9, but now in summer, struggles have just been what has befallen them, especially in the jungle and support roles. Things seem to have been not working out up until now, but with Mike Young and Xpecial now in those roles, they're clearly trying to fix what some of those issues are, and who knows, maybe this is the answer they need.
That was a little strange there as well in the level 1, just looking at how Xpecial actually pathed. Usually you want 5-point defense, and Xpecial ran down to the bottom side with Arrow, and now CLG get to 3-man strong here, get that ward down in the Raptor Pit. And so it was a little bit of a kind of a janky setup there. It wasn't really fantastic. They get wards on both the red buff and on the Raptor Pit, whereas Phoenix One actually don't get any wards in return.
Phoenix One will be a little bit down in information here. Not being able to know where your opponent starts can give that jungler an edge, as Huhi and Ryu will trade blows back and forth here. Clockwork windup means that the longer this goes on for, the better it'll be for Ryu, as those auto attacks enchanted will put a little bit of extra kick behind him. Dardoch and Darshan wanting to start off here in that Raptor Pit. Zig hangs around to see if maybe he could snipe one of them away, but that's not happening today. Without the acceleration gate to power up and extend the range of that shock blast, he doesn't really have a chance to steal anything away, and Mike Young will be starting off at his own red, moving towards the top part of the map. A very close fan vote right now.
Yeah, very close, actually. I mean, a lot of Counterlogic Gaming fans are like, it's special. It's always kind of 7-1 in the best of series. So historically, he has been the Kryptonite. We'll see. We haven't talked about him much. He got the Braum, which is a kind of a signature champion for him over time. If you think about the playmakers for Xpecial, it's the Alistar, and it's also the Braum. So he's going for a little bit more protection here with Arrow, and that's really kind of something that Phoenix One want to shore up, because Arrow has got the MVP last split, but now he has some of the worst laning stats in the league. He is 10th in CS at 10. Dead last for all AD carries. Even his damage per minute, he's 8th, and his CS per minute, his regular stats, his experience, he's 9th in those. So he is at the bottom of the table. #1 in kill participation, which means that stuff is not happening without him. Right. The team is still trying to revolve around him, but he's just not getting unlocked, and they hope that Xpecial is that change.
And having these performances this early on in the split, starting with a 0-5 beginning for Summer, it can start to take a toll on you. I mean, yesterday after the result of their match with Dignitas, where Phoenix won, you know, it was tied up 1-1. The third game was very close, and then ultimately they're not able to walk away with the win. Aero just tweeted a sad Pepe on Twitter. And that's, you know that's got to get to you after a while, not being able to find those wins, especially after such a successful spring split.
Feels bad,
Hopefully morale doesn't become a big issue for Phoenix One. They can stay focused. They can do what they need to do to seek out, identify those weaknesses, make the improvements necessary, like we were talking about. Maybe it is getting Mike Young in there. Maybe it is bringing in Xpecial to have that extra experience on the team, a player who's been in the LCS doing his thing for a long time. Dardoch grabbing his blue buff, gonna tick level 4. Mike Young, level 4 as well.
For Huhi.
Coming around, looking to make the play onto Huhi. Flash away though.
Yeah, very
Flash for
quick
flash.
there to go for the flash cocoon as opposed to an auto attack to get the red slow on him and then follow up. But I actually think this is so interesting by the junglers too, because what Dardoch did is Dardoch did a top side clear into a back, into go bottom side and pick up blue, so he'll have it for a little longer. But what I really like about this is they saw that Mike Young didn't do his Raptors, right? He went red to not doing Raptors to that means he's on top side. So Dardoch did this so that he could clear the bottom side, be on the bottom side of the map at the time that Mike Young would rotate around and do his Raptors, so that he could be in position to do something like this.
CLG gets some good damage down onto Xpecial through that as well. The damage coming in from the combo with Dardoch, as well as the binding off the back end from Aphromoo. Mike Young making his way into the top side. Tries to get himself away from the cocoon. The damage still coming through. Zig looking to make the flash into the knockback, and they've got the first blood.
And they used the flash from Zig to trade it for Darshan's, but Mike Young, able to outplay there, held the cocoon for the right amount of time. And these guys are looking good. Good game sense, for sure.
Yeah, that's what you want to see, and that's kind of what we were talking about, too. Not just the Lee Sin one trick. Here's another look exactly how he sets it up.
Yeah, because he went all the way through the top side after ganking. It's not really where you would expect him to be after that route, and he showed himself mid, but then holds it, throws the W, and the Elise W, when you have adrenaline pumping through your body in these high-intensity moments and you've already flashed, the Elise W animation with the spider is very similar to the E animation where she lifts up her arms. So,
She throws her arms forward for both of them. It's very easy to
and
confuse.
so you saw Darshan try to juke to the side when he saw it, and then he's like, oh, and just keeps running forward afterwards, and then the cocoon comes out. So the order there in which Mike Young did it, you can see that the nerfs don't seem to be affecting him too much on stage just yet.
Which is an awesome thing to see for such a young player, a guy who graduated high school last week and has now made his way from the high school graduation stage to the LCS stage.
It still blows my mind that the guy was challenger at 13 years old. I mean, at 13 years old, probably still picking boogers or something, you know? It lasted a long time, just saying.
What face.
But he was challenger.
He was challenger, so he can do whatever he wants at 13 years old. If you're able to have game skill like that, it translates into being an LCS player just at the edge of graduation of high school. Very impressive for him early on. Phoenix One hopes that it's enough to bring them into a spot where they're looking like they were in spring again. Mike Young seeing if he can make a return visit here to top lane.
I love these ganks so much because these are the ganks that people don't always ward for. And I think this is so clever because he's trying to tilt that top lane matchup because it's already slightly favorable. If he waits here, this pushes back towards him. So I don't know, does he complete the recall? He does?
Yep,
all right.
the way out.
Because this is going to push towards him. There's enough caster minions here that Darshan is going to have to walk up here in just a second. But it's just a matter of seconds, right? It's a thing in solo queue where you wait there too long, challenger players punish you because his red's about to come up. So Mike Young had like 5 seconds of a window to make that gank happen before he has to go to his bottom side. Dardoch hits 6. He's invading with Huhi. They know the red's coming up, and they want to pick on this rookie, who Dardoch said, you know, is at least in one trick. But he knows where he's coming from because they both come from that background.
Both on the Lee Sin. Dardoch moving in towards that red. And it looks like Mike Young is very, very aware of what's likely happening here, seeing the enemy mid lane missing. He knows this is dangerous.
The way that he pulled Krugs as well shows that he knows that something is going on, or at least he's saying, I don't want it to be a possibility, right? And that's kind of what you do is you play with imperfect information and you always kind of assume the worst, but you can't over-assume, right?
Dardoch not just going to steal away that red buff, but grabbing the chicken camp as well.
And this is from mid-priority, right? This is from mid lane being shoved up and from the bottom lane having to take it back at that time so they can't contest. Aero clearing it out. They're looking for him. Dardoch gonna go for the
first coming through, and they've got the kill onto Aero. Dardoch now needing to be a little careful. Mike Young doesn't want to jump in there. Still only level 5 on this Elise. That's the power of having your jungler hit that ulti.
Yep, exactly. Able to actually flash kick and get him back into the team. Arrow had a trap set up there too, but it was completely avoided during that fight. Let's watch that one more time here. The Fog of War control, big from CLG, and you saw that Dardoch was on the top side here, so Arrow actually, that's too far forward for him. That's way too far forward. Somebody else needs to be going in there, whether it's special walking in because he has the way to block, way to survive, way to W backwards. That actually for Arrow is a little bit on that side of, we're seeing kind of unacceptable mistakes from this guy.
Dardoch moving towards his own red. Sonic Wave's going to find out it's not there. You can see the question mark ping thrown out. And because Ryu is nearby, Mike had the comfort and the confidence to make sure he could steal that red away. Gets him a little more closely caught up to Dardoch, who's still 1 level ahead. But at least the Elise now hits level 6. Much less impactful for Elise as compared to Lee Sin. We all know what happens. Lee Sin hits level 6. You get the Dragon's Rage. So much more playmaking opportunity. Elise doesn't really have as much change.
Yeah, and you saw there as well, like, this is really emphasizing, I think this is a great game to show how jungling is a team effort. Even from the level 1 with the warding at the red and the Raptors, and then assuming the routes, etc. Right there, we just saw Stixxay throw a hawk shot through his own jungle to help Dardoch realize that the Krugs are still up and he doesn't have to face check them, right? Those are the tiny things that are so hard to see when you're spectating here, but they mean so much because he can walk up, get a cocoon to the face, get chunked out, has to back, and then he doesn't have pressure on the map. But the hawk shot allows him to not have to take that gamble.
Hawkshot's one of those abilities that I think the value of it is so much unseen by a lot of players and a lot of spectators, just because there's a lot you can do with it. Not just tracking the enemy jungler specifically, but you fire that off, you see that a camp is down, you know from that information that can be inferred about the location of the enemy jungler. Even if you never saw his character model on your screen, there's a lot that you can get from that.
Yeah, and you get the timer for the next time it comes up as well. So you get minutes of information to kind of play around with once you see that with Hawkshot. And I remember when Ashe kind of got reworked to the point where she had Ranger's focus and then Hawkshot was global. Like, Kobe was going insane about it's so powerful! And it is! It's incredibly powerful. Where you're able to just throw it all the way across the map, and teams love this champion for being able to get those early, like, you don't even win the lane all the time, but you win the jungle a lot of times because you don't have to take as many risks and you get a lot of information for free. So there's a lot of power in that hawk shot that, like you said, is very invisible to us.
I mean, there's a reason that we've seen Ashe be popular throughout the ebbs and flows of the AD carry meta. We saw her still be viable during the times of the lethality, Varus and Jhin spam. When those were banned away, Ashe was usually going to be picked into that. Still now, very, very popular because of what she can bring to the table. Even if you fall behind, you have the arrows. You can make big plays with her, set up plays with her. Champion just in general feeling very evergreen right now. Almost nothing that would knock her out of a position of viability there in bot lane.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's done well in this laning phase too. There's multiple builds for her. The Essence Reaver we've seen, Blade of the Rune King as well. Aphromoo though looking good, trying to get a pick. Charm not out yet. There it is.
All right, Charm's not finding its way there. Aphromoo still seeing if he can weave a binding through those caster minions, but the projectile's a little bit too fat.
Yeah, Mike Young just showed himself mid and went to the top side of the jungle. What's going to happen now is CLG will look to the bottom side, bottom turret very low, camp in this jungle, look for something there, possibly the red buff when it comes up. And Mountain Dragon.
Zig getting a very nice trade there onto Darshan in the top side, but Mike Young will move himself towards the Rift Herald. Remember, Rift Herald's actually very easy to solo for pretty much everyone now. Yeah. You can get to the back of it just by yourself. It's not really that hard to deal with.
It's a rotation.
CLG will take the Mountain Drake for themselves.
It's a rotation. It's a race right now. They're going to try to get this Rift Herald, get top side, maybe go for this turret, and try to get it before the bottom turret goes down. It'll be a slight race. We'll see. I believe CLG is very ahead, but it's going to be close.
CLG also has the Mountain Drake. Remember, the turret's a lot lower HP as well. CLG will grab turret first blood.
Comes up right there, and they have the Rift Herald now, so you do have to be careful. This could be a mid push, could be a top tier 2 push, depending on the speed at which they go for these. This is what's going to happen. They're going to go for top turret and mid simultaneously with the Rift Herald here.
CLG sending Aphromoo back, recognizing the need to defend in multiple locations. Darshan exhausted as he tries to use the Slicing Maelstrom to defend, but stunned up and brought down 1 versus 3.
And they might get the turret
cannon
too.
Will fall.
There goes 1 turret. Phoenix won 3 turrets and a kill to those 2 turrets from Counter Logic Gaming. Definitely a better macro play, and that's what suffered from Phoenix 1. Actually, pretty much for the whole split so far. I think back to the plays where they're trying to do Baron, and then the game just ends. Happens happened with Dignitas, happened with Envy.
Oh.
They're so susceptible to being backdoored or having a split pusher win the matchup and then just win the game while they're trying to do Baron. So it's been that macro play, and that's a good display there for Phoenix One. Makes fans a little bit more hopeful.
CLG now thinking more on the micro level. Maybe if they can come behind, set up a play on
They have the
Ryu,
pick, right?
and make that happen. Zig hanging around at
Wait,
the tier 2.
They have 3 people here. Xpecial's going to walk up.
Binding onto Zig, but because more people from Phoenix One are around, CLG has to back off from this play.
And that's one of the great things about pro play when teams are on the same page. You can tell there's more communication here from Phoenix One. This team already looks a little bit different than they did even just yesterday in how they're handling Counterlogic Gaming's pressure.
Dardoch needing to be real careful hanging around here. 5 members of Phoenix One at the ready. He has his flash available to make a kick if he needs it, but here's a replay of what happened to Darshan.
Yeah, this is an AP Kennen, so that ultimate's just for stunning. Pops the E to rush forward and try to take him by surprise, but it's not AP like I said. Gets stunned up by Xpecial, who has a great synergy with the Braum on both those champions as well.
Darshan trying to force the issue onto Zig up here on the top side.
Yeah, Zig just has more items though, so Darshan and Dardoch. The Dario brothers coming up top, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, full Blade of the Ruined King on Zig versus only the Bilgewater Cutlass of Darshan. The gold difference between these two, a little bit over 1,000 right now, and that is enough to make that completed item difference. You really got to be aware of those differences in terms of power if you're trying to make these plays.
And because Dardoch was topside and they're inferring that information, Mike Young, lane gank bottom, there's going to be a ward that spots him, but it's going to be pressure on this bottom turret.
He won't even walk up into that brush. He hangs back and waits just to see if maybe CLG will try coming forward a little bit too far.
I like his timings where he's like, you guys get 10 seconds and then I'm out of here. So he's like, I'll start the back. If something happens, then it happens. If it doesn't, then I don't want to give up pressure.
Yeah, he's making sure he doesn't overinvest in something that will ultimately not have a good chance of paying off.
I want to see what happens here because all of his camps are down. Is he keeping those timers, right? All of his camps in his jungle are taken. Where is he heading next? Because he doesn't really have a really strict goal right now. He just wanted to spend the gold. Looking for more penetration items.
One thing that's worth pointing out is he did go for the Sorcerer Shoes on the Elites. A lot of times these days you see something like Mobility Boots, something to get around the map a bit faster, but Mike Young wants to make sure when he does find someone, he does as much damage as possible. Hanging out over this wall, just seeing if somebody might come forward and try to take out that control ward, but it's not going to be happening today. Patient game being played by Phoenix One so far, up slightly over 1,000 gold. You've got Infernal Drake spawning in under 2 minutes here, and that should be a pretty big point of contention between these two teams.
And both teams actually have very little vision right now. They're fighting over it. Oh, there's the Flash Cocoon, and he misses.
Mike trying to make the play onto Afromu there, but the accuracy not where it needs to be for Phoenix One to dial in the pick. The charm comes out, finds its way onto Ryu. Huhi getting himself away from that Glacial Fissure thanks to the Black Shield. Pops his own ultimate as well.
Yep.
CLG
still has
out.
Stixxay still has that ultimate. Darshan still has teleport, but he's looking for top pressure. Saw that the Jace dipped out of vision, so doesn't want to stick around in that top lane. Wants to back and finish his Blade of the Ruined King. Right now, though, Counterlogic Gaming, they're up in gold in the bottom lane. Like, they have the Stixxay CS, which has been quite good. And it's one of those things where you're like, man, the Caitlyn should probably be beating the Ashe. Well, the Morgana's a range matchup. And also, I think adding Xpecial wasn't really for the lane phase, right? Xpecial's never been like a laning support. He's always been that playmaker, right? You think of the Thresh, the Braum, the Alistar. So he's an out-of-lane type support. And this may be a little bit of that change that Phoenix One was looking for, because Shady's played things like Brand, like Vel'Koz, those more mage-oriented supports like the Lulu and Karma as well. So because the meta has shifted slightly, the meta favors Xpecial a bit more.
And I like seeing the way meta shifts impact teams and individual players as well, because it's something that sometimes slips under the radar a bit. If you're really good at a certain playstyle, and that playstyle is just bad in the current iteration of League of Legends, the game becomes a lot harder for you.
Yeah, and that's why I think, like, random aside here, that Faker is such an incredible player to watch, because regardless of what meta it is, he still finds a way, unless it's Xerath, he still finds a way to be one of the top, if not the top mid laner in all of the world, just because he understands how to play all the different styles, looking for himself.
Uhi jumping in there, getting the Black Shield to make sure he doesn't get locked down as he does.
Oh, here comes Darshan on the side, though. Flash binding, and he makes it.
Way onto Xpecial. A little bit more damage comes through. summoner spells being spent by both sides here.
Yeah, Infernal Drake. That's what this is all about. They're fighting over that thing.
We said it was going to be a point of contention.
Trying to get some poke. They do have an Orianna, and it's always something you have to watch out for. Huhi, though, looking for a charm from the backside. He doesn't have his Spirit Rush, so he's looking for something like Mike Young or Arrow. They saw him, though.
More CC over onto Xpecial, but the Drake has already been secured. CLG was working on it the entire time, and they end up getting away with it for free. Darshan on the backside, stun on the front, onto Xpecial. Huhi over the wall. But CLG's got to be very careful about the way they fight this. Everyone's a bit separated. Darshan's making the ulti happen big. 5-man ulti. Charms come out. Damage goes through. Xpecial's going to be going down. More health bars evaporated, and 3 die for Phoenix 1. A double kill for Dardoch.
They're trying to outplay here. They still have an ability to do so. They have the mana arrow burning down.
One more hit'll get him. Stixxay's got the shot.
Look at how low everybody is on Counterlogic Gaming, but they come up with a 4-for-1.
The bloodiest team in the NALCS shows exactly the way they want to play this game. They get their fight, they get the Infernal Drake, and now the mid lane tier 1 is their reward as the ace comes through and Ryu ends up dead.
Yeah, that's a 5-for-1 with Dardoch picking him up on the backside. What are you doing? That was Phoenix 1. They can't run to the bottom side, or they don't want to run to the bottom side, because they don't want to run into 3 members as 5. But I feel like they don't want to give up mid priority. But they already have mid priority. Doesn't matter. They don't have to check this. They don't have to walk in there. The last time they saw Darshan was on that side. Even if they go down towards Huhi, he used his charm on Ryu earlier and missed it. So you pick to run into the guy who can AoE CC your whole team? Questionable decision from P1.
I'm pretty sure Dardoch's Lee Sin just got a double kill there with the Tempest Cripple smacking his hand into the ground. That was the ultimate pimp slap, taking down Phoenix 1, getting those couple of kills for himself. And then Ryu, just hangs around a little bit too long, and the Sonic Wave into Resonating Strike from Dardoch seals that deal.
And you're talking about Dardoch, 3-0-3, 100% kill participation, the acquisition for Counterlogic Gaming in the offseason. Hold on though, Zig.
Zig, stuns come through, holds him down long enough to make sure that's not a 1-for-1. Look at the damage in the last team fight.
Yeah.
When you get a 5-man Kennen ulti, you're gonna top the chart.
Doesn't matter if you're AP or not at that point. You're getting your ultimate and you're getting your W on everybody, which is your max rank spell first on Kennen AD. So even if it's not the auto attacks, we're in that circuit. Hold on though.
Ooh,
counter.
Afro move just destroyed by Mike Young. Dardoch having to run away, the Winter's Bite slowing him down temporarily. Good pickup for P1.
P1 want to push mid. Bottom is actually getting pushed in right now by Darshan. Tier 2 already down, so he's looking at inhibitor turret here. Looking for the slow. I don't know how much damage he'll be able to get on this turret as Phoenix 1. Arrow started to get some trap levels.
Ooh, Mike Young with the flash cocoon makes the play.
Not afraid at all to go for those plays. He has done that pretty much every time he can flash. It's 21 minutes in, and I'm pretty sure I've seen him flash 3+ times already.
Yeah, he's flashing every single opportunity he gets to maybe make something happen. No fear about that.
Flashed mid, flashed there, flashed earlier for a flash cocoon that didn't work out for him.
But now you've got to be a little bit concerned. Darshan might be coming around for the flank here, although granted there is no Slicing Maelstrom available. The mid lane tier 2 goes down. Phoenix 1 goes up to a 4 turret count for themselves this game. And Zyrene, we are at 36.9 thousand gold to 37.1. This game, only a couple hundred gold separates these two teams.
And this is going to come down a lot to who gets the pick set up in Vision ahead of time. And I'll talk about the comps for a second here because that's so important. Is Counterlogic Gaming, they got countered a little bit in top lane. The Jace will win that matchup. They got attention there. So Phoenix 1 should be winning the top side. So your split push isn't really that great for CLG. And then in terms of pick, it's so much harder to pick somebody off when there's a Braum, because the Braum will be face checking, jumping back. The Braum will be blocking a lot of the damage with his shield, so it's much harder to kill somebody there. So Counterlogic Gaming's Morgana, their Charm, their Dardoch kickback, and even Stixxay's Arrow, they have to be even more accurate than normal. So it's a harder to execute comp for CLG, whereas P1, they still have the Orianna to fall back on. They still have, the Flash Cocoons, which is kind of a hard thing to do consistently from Mike Young, but he's making it work. So P1 have a little bit of an easier time in this game with some winning matchups, some counters in their composition, whereas Counterlogic Gaming, they're going to have to really rely on denying Vision and utilizing Hawk Shot to not get caught themselves.
Utilizing the Hawk Shot in the Vision game, especially to allow Dardoch that 3-0-3 Lee Sin to get those kick setup plays they need. Otherwise, you end up having stuff like this.
Yeah. And hurting him off to the side because it was the only point that he could walk up without the trap being in front of him before that moment. And then that's where the Flash Cocoon came through. So Mike Young read him like a book.
And that trap line, just a little bit of a look at things to come as this game goes on. If Phoenix One is allowed to maintain their footing and get Arrow farmed up and stay in a spot where they can be a threat and not just be on their back foot the entire time, those trap lines are going to be laid down every single time they go for the siege.
Yeah, Arrow still down in CS, of course. He's actually one of the worst performing AD carries, like I said earlier. But you go to the flip side, Stixxay is actually one of the best performing AD carries at the moment. Stixxay has the most kills, most assists, and he's #1 in damage per minute. Like, he's pretty much the things you want on the bloodiest team.
Which works out.
Exactly. But he's on this Ashe here, and he's not going for team fight, right? He's got the Phantom Dancer and the Blade of the Rune King. No Runaan's here. And then Arrow on the other side, going for the Energizer build. He's looking for Rapid Fire Cannon next. But the IE, with the increased critical strike damage, will help your Static Shiv that crits do even more magic damage. So you're looking at like 300+ magic damage crits that just kill caster minions flat out.
We just saw it hit for 411 on that back line that he crit there in mid lane.
It's pretty ridiculous. Even when people are just sieging, the Caitlyn hitting something and critting it makes it jump all the way down, and you hit this caster minion all the way in the back that's like 1,500+ range away. And it's pretty ridiculous.
It is funny how the Caitlyn got nerfed, and now Huhi, the man making the play, the arrow comes through, the stun comes out, the damage onto Phoenix One. Huhi's got to be careful. He is taken low. Xpecial trying to disengage this one. A lot of damage onto Aphromoo, 1-for-1. And CLG walks away.
But that is what I'm talking about with the composition. That was so hard for CLG to even get a 1-for-1 there. They would have actually just ran that over if it wasn't for Xpecial. You watch that again, jumps in front of the arrow so Mike Young doesn't take the damage, doesn't take the stun, and he's able to put up his shield in time as well. So watch this here as they start collapsing with 4 people and 4 people contributing abilities. Arrow doesn't get hit there. Charm lands onto Elise. Xpecial takes the stun and gets the shield up, takes the binding as well. He takes the CC chain, and the only person to take the Morgana ultimate. If that had hit Mike Young, he's in the Morgana ultimate, doesn't have flash to get away, and then it might be 2 people going down. So Xpecial kind of trades his life for that.
Great bodyguard job from him. A lot of damage from Arrow in that last fight, too. Exactly where your Caitlyn needs to be. Phoenix One starts up Baron Nashor.
Like I said, Hawkshot, though, is so powerful. They already see this being started up. It's half HP. They don't even get the TP from Darshan, though.
Phoenix One does do Baron very quickly. I mean, that was dropping fast. If it wasn't for the Hawkshot, there could have been some trouble as Slicing Maelstrom is used to clear out the minion wave and make it so Darshan gets enough firing time onto this bottom lane tier 3 to take it down and crack the base.
Doesn't have doesn't have Runaan's Hurricane to actually just AoE wave clear and stack up his passive faster. So he went for Phantom Dancer, which has more attack speed on it, and will give him just way more damage against those turrets. Well, not way more, a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
It gives him more survivability in the fights and the split push as well. So that's going to be interesting to track.
Slicing Maelstrom used to clear out the minion wave, not the normal expectation you'd have for the ability, but one in this case and point that was used in an unorthodox manner for a success. When you crack the base open like that, that's really big, because if CLG can get ahead, they can push in there and force that fight in open ground.
And that's what, I mean, that's actually a really good move from Darshan because of the fact that he's not winning that split push. That split push is going the way of Zig. He can poke them down, and constantly win those fights. He's up about 50 CS now on the Jace, and I think he may be going for either Hex Drinker or it could be him going for, hold on, no, Death Dance. But look at this, we're seeing it right here. No ultimate on Darshan either, though. And here goes Mike Young.
The 1v1 breakdown on a 2v2, but the charm comes out, and Mike Young will be the sacrificial lamb to keep Zig alive. Xpecial trying to run from Dardoch, Aphromoo, and Stixxay. Some quick feet on him, but not quick enough to get away from the kick of Dardoch.
Yeah, absorbs an ultimate there. And now CounterLogic Gaming looking at the Baron because that was Mike Young down on the bottom side and Xpecial down on the top side. They're going to push 2 for Inhibitor and kind of position themselves around top, around the Baron. And this might be, Arrow has to go answer.
Somebody's got to stop Darshan and Huhi here. Darshan will just stay positioned forward, auto-attacking this Inhibitor.
Like what Huhi's doing, he's staying out of vision at the moment. CounterLogic Gaming is going to start this up. Arrow is the one who's kind of there. Arrow and Ryu. They throw down the Scryer's Orb. That's where Huhi shows himself. And when they finally have 2 people up, they back off of Baron, but the Inhibitor was the prize.
All they had to do was just keep that attention on Baron. The other guys could take down that bottom lane Inhib. And let's harken back to what you were saying earlier, Zyrene. The macro game from P1 we saw lacking previously. throughout this split so far, these first couple of weeks, and now it's starting to show again as CLG out-rotates.
Yeah, I feel like in terms of macro play, CLG had the advantage there, the power play. They had the ball in their court, and you can do anything that you want there. Whereas Phoenix One, they just fumbled. This is Zig getting caught here by Darshan, and then Huhi being in the right place to reinforce. Mike Young throws out the cocoon, but he took so much damage there. The charm did so damn much on top of all the abilities that he threw into him afterwards. That was ridiculous. And then Special had to check topside. Does an okay job of outplaying there, but then he really can't outplay that at that point. They didn't want to use it, but forces them and makes them work for it.
And although the gold still stays pretty close, a lot of extra map pressure for CLG now with that bottom lane inhibitor down. Means the super minions will be pouring in, and it's the best inhibitor as well. It's the one opposite end of the map from Baron Nashor.
Yep.
It means that Baron dance could be underway any moment.
And this is where Phoenix One look the worst. When they have an inhibitor down and Baron is up. This is when they look absolutely the worst, and they've lost games just off the split push and not being able to win it or reinforce their play around it correctly. Zig, though, does look like it's Death Dance coming for him next instead of the Maw.
Trying
But
to...
look at Huhi. Huhi, the way he's playing is he's always threatening mid-priority and bottom. So he just comes around here, threatens mid-priority, pushes out, and he has a way to escape. So he can just dip down into the bottom side of the map where he knows nobody is and deal a lot of damage to those minions on his way out. So this is actually really well played by Huhi.
And it's fun to watch Huhi's evolution as a player as well. This is a guy who, not that long ago, was being criticized for, is he playing Aurelion Sol? Okay, if not, then what's he doing? And now he's having such a greater effect on so many more champions, including what you're seeing like this game on the Ahri, being able to rotate around, make those moves happen. 4v4 potential here in the mid lane as Darshan makes his way towards this as well. Arrow lands onto Arrow, but it's immediately going to be cleansed away. Huhi jumping into the fight. Black Shield to make sure he doesn't get CC'd. Special going to be killed before he can find the Glacial Fissure. Mike Young joins him. And CLG's got themselves a rampage on the AD carry, 2 for 0. Ryu hanging out over the wall here. His Banshee's Veil might be able to keep it alive for a moment, but Dardoch with a nice kick flash. Darshan can't make his way into the fight with the ulti, but Dardoch will stay on Ryu long enough for Huhi to grab the kill, and CLG with 3 clean pickups now marches down the mid lane and will turn their attention back towards Baron.
Yep, Zig has to deal with the super minions here. Well played from Counter Logic Gaming. The arrow from Stixxay, landing onto Arrow, getting the QSS, forcing pressure onto him, and then immediately, I like the hawk shot as well. It's cheeky there, ends up coming up big though.
And Baron's not going to be long for this world. They'll take that one down very rapidly. No contest whatsoever. And CLG now looking very good, 6,000 gold up.
Yeah, you can see already in rotation here on the bottom side. Arrow does QSS it, the right person for them to hit. And then Huhi ends up getting the charm on Special, keeps him around for too long. And then the root afterwards. Oh, man. Aphromoo, like, every time I watch him play, and him and, like, Olay, when I watch them play Blitzcrank or Morgana, I realize just how bad of a support player I am. Because these are champions that, when you are in a team fight, you usually have a single ability that is incredibly impactful, and if you miss it, then
you're goofed.
You're basically a walking ward for a few seconds, right? There are some exceptions with, like, Morgana, etc., but for...
Oh, wow.
Speaking of walking wards, that's pretty much how he treated him right there.
That was... a ward would have lasted longer because you got to hit it 3 times. He hit Mike Young about twice and he was gone.
You're not wrong. But yeah, and like watching Aphromoo play things like Morgana and Blitzcrank, you throw out the hook, you throw out the binding, but he's only throwing it out at the right time when there's options that are covered by the person's movement, where they're pinned against a wall, etc., or he's going for them when they're layered with something else. So I really like watching how he plays these, because otherwise, it's so hard to appreciate when you're not playing the champion, you're watching somebody else play. You're like, oh man, that binding, how do you know to throw it that direction in that way, etc. Like he's just, it's so good. I'm gushing right now. I'm gonna stop.
Well, CLG,
it's good to see
now in a spot where they might be able to make a
like
pretty nice play onto Arrow, kicks him back, takes him down. Aphromoo, the one who gets the kill credit for that one. Darshan, the man who set it up with the flash, not even the flash, but just the maneuverability into positioning himself for that kick. Now puts CLG in a spot where they're 5 versus 4, no enemy AD carry for 35 seconds, 1 inhib down, 2 inhibitor turrets under siege.
Yeah, Dardoch coming up big again with these kicks. The Lee Sin takeaway is big because they got the Lee Sin away from Mike Young off of his big comfort champion, but they got the Caitlyn in response, and the Caitlyn has not been able to be effective in this game at all. Lost the laning phase, and then in these team fights, it doesn't really have a front line to operate. Special's kind of the one. It hasn't been working out yet.
I mean, when you've got one front line. It's your support, so it's going to be lower economy than anyone else is anyway, and you're down 7,000 gold. That's just not a meaningful amount of protection for someone who you would normally design a team composition around, making sure that he's able to scale, do what he needs to do, especially when you've got a player who was an MVP like Arrow. He's just not able to be the carry his team needs this game, and CLG has now broken 2 lanes of inhibitor turrets. Working on that third one there in the top side. 2 inhibitors exposed. The bottom one did respawn. Mid one taking damage. Stixxay black shielded. Aphromoo been doing a great job this game of protecting both him and Huhi whenever they need that CC protection. Huhi grabbing that bottom lane inhibitor yet again. The mid lane one's going to need a couple more auto attacks to make sure that it goes down as well, but that's only a matter of time for CLG at this point. Zig gets stunned up. Dardoch's got yet another kick, and Zig is going to be dropping.
And Dardoch has just been slamming this game. He has only missed out on 3 kills, and those were picks that happened on the bottom side and in the mid as well. So Dardoch really just showing he's been a great acquisition for this team so far in terms of his aggression and making things happen. The Bloodiest team still on top.
CLG putting the screws to P1 here, trying to put the last couple of nails in the coffin as well and just end this game. Like you mentioned at the start, Zyrene, quickly and cleanly. Huhi jumping in with the charm onto Xpecial, rooting up that front line. More damage coming in. They take him down pretty rapidly. They finally get that last hit. Darshan on a killing spree with that one.
Able to get him with that final hit that ended up critting, and right now, P1 base in shambles, 34.5 minutes in here. CLG, we talked about we want to see them win fast here if they want to be a #1 team and they'll put their money where their mouth is as Worlds contenders.
Well, they're putting on a pretty good show so far. 1 Nexus turret left standing between them and their final objective. 4 Phoenix 1 members still trying to resist for now, but make that 3. Stixxay grabbing the unstoppable streak onto another kill onto Mike Young. Zig trying to get himself away, but he's kicked back as he knocks him back, and Darshan goes on a rampage of his own. CLG now finds the charm onto Ryu. He'll be brought down shortly thereafter. Arrow, the last man standing, but does not stand long, and the game will end for CLG.
Early game was a little rough, but that's pretty much all you can say about that for Counter Logic Gaming in terms of the flaws that were shown that game. That was incredibly clean from them after they were able to pick up some kills, and they were able to get those side lanes too, and I feel like that was the big turning point, is when Counter Logic Gaming showed they know how to pressure multiple sides of the map at once, where Huhi has such a, really plays well around understanding the vision that they don't have on the enemy team and playing to that, because they were able to pick off the split pusher, and then normally you say that's where the 4 people on the other team, when you 2v1 the bottom side, the 4 people on the other team go and try to do Baron, right? Try to get the teleport. But then Xpecial got caught, and then the rest of the team was not in sync. So we're still seeing some of these things that even Mark Z was talking about on the desk about they don't have direction or leadership or somebody to really follow on Phoenix 1 that is leading everybody.
And seeing Huhi make these rotational plays like this and pretty much just live between mid and bottom lane, it throws back to why he's so good on Aurelion Sol. Such a roam-based champion, the skill set translates to something like Ahri that has a similar potential, and he just knows how to control so much of the map at once. And then it puts Phoenix 1 in a spot where they're like, wait, what do we do? Where are we at? Where are we going? And one of the best showcases of that in that game was around 18 minutes, the fight near the Dragon, where Phoenix 1 was grouped up together as 5, and CLG was at 3 different points around them, behind the pit, below the pit, and then so importantly, Darshan in the top of the river.
The solo laners with the flank here. You see, there's the charm going out from a Huhi on the side, so they decide instead of going to the bottom left or to the right and 3v5ing, they decide to go right down the mid, and they already have the minion wave pushed, so I feel like they didn't have much to lose, but that is a disgusting ultimate from Darshan. You literally cannot ask for a better ultimate on Kennen than that. If you're AP, that's pretty much it. That's the best that you could ask for, but that's literally the best you could ask for in that situation. That is disgusting that P1 was able to not avoid that. And that's something that I feel like, sorry, it's a little hard for us to understand from this perspective, but like understanding where they last saw Darshan, did he sneak by the entire vision line? Did he actually sneak by all those minions is something that I'm going to have to look at.
And that was the start of the momentum avalanche for CLG that just continued throughout the rest of the game. After that point, it looked like Phoenix 1 was stumbling, trying to find their way through the rest of the game, and that resulted in moments like this next one. 29 minutes in, CLG, a 3-for-0 plus Baron.
And this was where Xpecial takes a lot, and then he's like kind of the punching bag right now in this game. and it doesn't get much better for him. Arrow, though, of course, takes a beating. They go in. The charm lands on Xpecial, and then he gets picked up here on the backside as Darshan was already collapsing, and Zig just trying to rotate. And the Jace being late to this is really big because the fact that he didn't TP in, that the Kennen had the inside track on this matchup is because CLG was controlling the bottom side vision. Because that's completely dark for Zig, means that he has to respect that. The inhibitor's already down. He has to respect the fact that that's a situation where he can't go and face check that or even leave the lane and think that, oh, Huhi might not be here would be disrespectful.
Huhi with so much damage to champions that game. You can see there 18.8 thousand damage, the highest in the match, despite the fact that he was the guy who was always rotating back and forth between the lanes, maintaining priority, like you said, also maintaining threat on that split push situation. He was still in every fight. He was still exactly where he needed to be. But we're going to step away. When we come back, it's game 2 between Counter Logic Gaming and Phoenix One. Don't you go anywhere.